is up, Haunt Forum? I thought we'd take a quick look tonight at the business end of the FOGduino. Basically, this is a little 3D printed box I made to hold the Arduino, a display, a couple of indicator lights, and some buttons. You'll have to ignore my little microphone sensor over here. I'm eventually going to replace that, probably with an infrared sensor, so I could trigger some fog effects when some kids walk up. We don't get very many here, maybe 12, 14, 16 in a good year. So kind of planning to save my fog juice and then really make a big show when the kid walks up every now and then. So this is basically what we've got. The buttons across the top here. The first one just gives you a burst of fog so you can test or kind of see what the effect's going to look like. The second button gives you a way to switch between modes, which I'll show here in a minute. And the third button is a reset. In case you just want to reset the Arduino or you get into an emergency stop function where you need to clear an error or something of that nature, and you can reset the Arduino from out here. The button or the LEDs here, green shows that the Arduino has power. See if I can get this to focus. The orange indicates that our heater is active. We're still in warm-up mode, as you can see from the display. And the LED on the right is a purple LED, so that shows when the fog is active. I have the fog disconnected because we're inside tonight, so anytime you see the purple LED on, that indicates that under normal conditions you'd have a burst of fog, so you probably have to kind of just make the psh sound in your head and imagine that going on, but again, that purple LED will indicate fog. So right now we're warming up, we're almost to operating temperature. The top line of the top one line of the display, I is the inlet temperature of the heat exchanger and O is the outlet. That's read from the 2 type K thermocouples. The S is a set temperature at 400 degrees, which we're aiming for, and the M is the minimum operating temperature, so I set that to 370. Basically all these values are programmable in the sketch. I didn't set up any real menu or anything. Again, I only use this a couple times a year, so I didn't put a menu on there. I just upload those through the sketch. Let's see if we can get this focused just a little better here. So right now the fogger has warmed up. You see our inlet and outlet temperatures are both a little above 400. So we're actually overshot the set point just a little bit. The heater just runs, hits the set point and shuts off. I didn't do any type of PID control. That doesn't tend to work well because you have a varying load from the fogger if you're fogging a lot or just not at all. So that doesn't tend to tune itself real well. So anyway, so right now we're paused. I'll go ahead and hit the mode switch one time. So the first mode up is just the kind of standard interval mode where we fog. Right now I've got it set for 2 seconds every 10 seconds. So you can see we just counted down. There went our purple LED. You can see again on the 4th line, we're counting down 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and we're going to fog again. So you could upload a new sketch with whatever intervals you want. Again, just 2 seconds every 10 seconds for demonstration. So we'll advance the mode. This is our sensor mode. So you can see here we're scanning the microphone sensor. I'll talk a little quieter here. Let me snap my fingers. So there we triggered the sensor. Now we're in a blanking interval where the sensor won't re-trigger. I set that again to 10 seconds. So once that time elapses, you'll see kind of the eyeballs come back up. Now the sensor's active, so again we can re-trigger. Set their 2-second interval. And now it times out for 10, so if you've got an anxious kid that just wants to stomp on a sensor mat or keep triggering it, this kind of times out and gives you a little bit of rest there for the fogger. So next up, this is what I call simmer mode. This time's in milliseconds, so right now we're shooting a 20 millisecond burst every 200 milliseconds. So just a tiny burst of fog every 2 seconds. Again, that's programmable. But this provides just a real low background effect, just tiny little puffs of fog coming out pretty much continuously. And since we're running the heater at the same time we're fogging with the Arduino, that can easily keep up. So the next mode, let's see here, is Sense Sim, I call it, but it's a combination of the sensor mode and the simmer mode. So right now we're doing, again, the low simmer background fogging of 20 milliseconds every 2 seconds. And if I trip the sensor, now you can see we've got a 2-second burst of fog, but now we're back to the simmer mode. And again, the sensor times out, so you can't re-trigger that for 10 seconds. Again, programmable, so now that time's elapsed. Still simmering, and there my talking triggered the sensor again. So again, that kind of gives you a way to have a low background fog. Some kids walk up, you trigger a big burst of fog, put on the big show, and then you go back into your kind of waiting background mode. So look at the next here. This is a cook mode, I call it. Again, just a little faster timing than the simmer. So we're putting out a 20 millisecond burst of fog every 1500 milliseconds, so every second and a half. You kind of turn that up, so you kind of have a low medium type mode with that. This is a random mode, so basically you can program in the maximum seconds you're willing to wait. So let's see, it's chosen to fog 3 seconds in a 6-second interval here. So there's a 3-second burst of fog. Heater just kicked on. So then I think it went to, I didn't quite catch that, 9 seconds maybe? 1 second in 9. So there's a burst of fog, 4 seconds in 5. So again, it just kind of picks random intervals. You can program the maximum time you want to wait, so you might punch in 30 or 40 seconds in a real display and maybe fog 3, 4, or 5 seconds out of that. So just a little way to change it up, kind of keep your display active. Okay, so this is boil mode. Basically, it's kind of like the simmer and cook mode, but this auto tunes, as you can see, our timer going down now. We may actually trip out an error here. It's decreasing the off time because it sees that our temperature, our set temperature, is still met, because we're obviously not pumping fog now. So it's going to try and run the shortest off interval, or consequently the most fog, through the fogger that you can. If I were to stop the heater, and you may see it here in just a second, once the fogger cools off, and it would cool off a lot faster if we were pumping the fog through, once it cools off, it'll automatically start lengthening that time again, again trying to keep at the set point, but make the maximum fog possible. I also set this up so it stores the value every time you exit, and it recalls that value every time you enter this mode. So it has a pretty good basis for where it needs to be each time you enter and exit, but it continually updates that. If you switch fog fluid, or it's a really cold night or a warm night, that'll be a little different. So it basically just keeps track of where it is and continually updates it. So that's all the features. Let me switch back into pause mode here to stop the flashing. A couple different things I programmed in, an emergency low and an emergency high temp. If you hit any of those limits, it automatically kicks into emergency mode and waits for an additional input. And I'll also show you here, I kept the fog fluid sensor, so if you run low on fog juice, you get a note to add the fog juice, and it keeps everything warm and ready. There's a user programmable time delay. I've set it for 15 seconds just for demonstration, but if it doesn't get fog juice in 15 seconds, then it switches to this emergency stop mode. So once you hit that, the heater shuts off and the fogger just waits. Say you fill the fog juice back up, which I'll go ahead and stop tripping the sensor here, then just press the reset button and it'll reboot, and you'll be back in action there. So that's a real quick rundown of a few of the features. Hope you enjoy it. If you have any questions, feel free to post on Haunt Forum, and I'll try and answer them.